Hey everybody, this is Elle from the Unapologetic Women Empowerment Dynasty, and you're listening to the Unapologetic Women podcast, the show for women who choose to live their legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. If this is a space you are curious about, visit unapologetic-women.com. Today we're talking about being allowed but not welcomed with Missy Vircks. Missy is a mover and a shaker, a waymaker, and sometimes known to be a feral woman. And if you think her introduction is to the point, wait till you hear our conversation and you'll understand there is no long intro required. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a sensational conversation around labels, wisdom, the sense of belonging, and so much more with my incredible guest, Missy. I want you to say that again.
The part about stripping labels?
Yes, I want you to say it again.
So I don't like to describe myself because everybody says you should strip labels off. And I like some of the labels I've been given. I've been told that I'm bold and I'm bossy and I'm sassy and I'm sometimes snarky. And I kind of like those things about myself. They've gotten me very far in life. And so it's hard to describe yourself when everybody says don't use labels. But I like some of the labels. So
shall we just go straight there as part of the conversation? And here's why. I feel that this is part of being an unapologetic woman. Like, screw what everybody says. I'm one that always says, don't describe yourself as labels. And what I mean by that is the labels that we are given that puts us in a box and changes people's behavior towards us and are disempowering to us. Labels such as, I'm a narcissist, or I'm a depressant, or so for me, any label that we use to disempower ourselves is a let's not use those labels. But if it's a label that resonates from an energetic personality, quirky, yes, this kind of feels like uplifting and stuff, who cares what they say, what you can and can't do?
yeah, I would agree, except I would add a little bit of a tangent where a lot of people have called me things and they've meant it to put me in a box. And I've always been enough of a defiant or rebel enough where, oh, you think that's too much, too big, too loud, too bold? Just wait a minute. so they, I don't know. Anytime anybody says, tone it down a notch, that's like immediate 10 notches higher.
I love it. I'm of the opinion that I'm old enough at this stage of the fight to actually be really playful with this and to do what I want, when I want, in the way that I want. And if something suits me, I get to do it. And if it doesn't suit me, then I don't do it. And labels for me is one of those things. If I want to define myself today as bold, brassy, beautiful, defiant, outgoing, I get to do that. If I want to label myself as shy, introspective, can't give a shit kind of person tomorrow, then I get to do that as well. I feel like all these rules that we are finding ourselves in that has us hesitate in fully expressing ourselves are meant to be broken by women such as us. Because at the end of the day, you get to describe yourself in whatever way you want, honey, to whoever you want, and they get to take it or leave it. And just in the same sense, people get to describe me in whatever way they want, whenever they want. I get to choose whether I take it or leave it. And for the most part, I leave it. So that was such a wonderful intro to this conversation. And I had to record that because so often what is said before I press record is so juicy. And then I think, oh, there's a woman somewhere in the world who is coming up against this exact same thing. And this could be the one thing she needed to hear in order for her to give herself permission to break all the rules, take on labels, don't take on labels. Even if I say don't take on labels that disempower you, who the hell am I to tell you what to do? Like, you get to say, screw you, Elle. I have no issue with that. So, Missy, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited that you said yes, because we've only had one conversation, and it was, yeah, Mama wants more of this lady, and I think the world gets to taste you a little bit as well. And when you just immediately said yes, I was like, I love life. I'm loving life at the moment. So thank you so much for being on today's podcast and being willing to explore wherever this conversation goes. As always, nothing is pre-planned. It's kind of like two women coming together and having a fat, juicy conversation about whatever comes out of our mouths and playing with that.
Well, that's a little bit of a risk with a gal like me. So game on.
Oh, honey, it's a huge risk with a gal like me. So I like to start the show off with one question for everybody. And that is, what does it mean to you to be an unapologetic woman?
Well, at this point in my life, I probably can answer that a lot easier than I would have years ago. To me, being unapologetic it is simply that. Like, I'm not going to apologize for the space that I take up. I'm not going to apologize for the polka dots that I wear. I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I cuss. I'm not going to apologize for being 5 foot nothing and having bigger balls than most of the men I know. Like, it's just being okay in my own skin and living out the intuition in my gut that I did terrible injustice to by ignoring for too many years. And so I'm trying to, I don't want to say make up for lost time, but really empowering that within myself, because damn it, I'm pretty good at trusting that gut, and it hasn't actually failed me when I listen to it. So
why do you think we as women so often get into that phase of life where we stop trusting our intuition, or not necessarily trusting the intuition, but acting on the intuition, allowing ourselves to express from the space of the intuitive knowing?
I think we're, in the, how would I succinctly say this? I often have said that I feel like I was born in the wrong generation or even era sometimes. Like, I, do you know who St. Bridget is? St. Bridget of Kildare, like the Irish mythology. She started out like, I would call her a green witch, apothecary, herbs, all that kind of stuff, right? And the Catholic Church converted her into a nun, and she became a saint and all this. And I've always really identified with her story because she was a medicine woman first. Then they turned her into a saint. Not that I think I'm a saint, but they converted her from what she knew and the gifts that I believe God gave her into something that had a label on it, right? A saint, a nun, a whatever, where she was, and obviously I'm paraphrasing, there's so much more to her story, but the part that's parallel for me is I feel like as we progress, and I use that word loosely because I don't always think moving forward in time is progress. I think that the way we are now, there's so much technology, there's so much information, but there's so much less wisdom. There's so much less connectedness. There's so much less trust of things that actually have worked for generations and eras and all of that. And I think that our brain takes over what our heart and our gut always knew. You think of like what grandmothers taught their daughters that taught their granddaughters, that, I mean, that stuff lived on in generations for a reason, right? It's because it worked. It's because it was passed down with love and with care and with intention. And now we just have some clicks on a damn screen and not, oh, we can swear, right? I guess I didn't clear that.
Oh, fuck yes.
Okay. I figured. But now we have all of this in front of us, available to us, and I think we're worse off than when we had the lore and the love and the intention, the deliberateness of that stuff passed person to person. So I don't know. I think technology and logic overrode heart and gut and intention.
And I love it. And I actually feel we are living in the perfect time because, and here's why I'm going to say this. I have this conversation of information versus wisdom a lot. And the fact that I believe that we have a lack of wisdom in our society at the moment, which is creating so much pain and chaos. And people are literally information saturated. And in the process, they have lost trust in themselves. They are losing their confidence. They're going from the one source of information. All they're looking for is information. I just took off my entire website and I put on a single video and I said, if you come to my website, have a conversation with me. I'm not going to give you information on my website because that's what people are doing. They're going from one source to the next source to the next source. All they want is information. And that information, I don't even think we can say it's the mind or it's the brain. It's the collective conditioning that they are tapped into, and they're not using their minds for critical thinking at the moment, and they're not allowing the critical thinking to be guided by the gut, by the heart, by that intuitive knowing of who we are, what we are, and what's good and right for us as individuals, not for us as a society. Because when we start getting back to what is good for the individual, that multiplies into society. But people are putting society before themselves, and in the process, they're freaking killing themselves. They're burning out, they're committing suicide, there's higher depression, all of these mental diseases because we are not allowing for wisdom to be harnessed through life experience. And books don't teach, websites don't teach, Google don't teach. Information is not wisdom. Wisdom has to be lived. Wisdom has to be experienced. And so I believe that we are living in this time, Missy, because women like us are actually the instigators of a new era where we are getting out of head and back into heart in order for humanity to start operating on a higher level of consciousness once again. And I get how you feel, because God knows there have been so many days that I've been here going, am I on the right planet? Like, have I been dropped off on the wrong planet? And it took
It's
me
funny.
a really long time to kind of go, yeah, I'm on the right planet at the right time, but I'm playing in a different level of consciousness to the status quo.
It's funny you say that because, you know, my husband will send me a news link or something, you know, the new crazy thing that's happening. And my standard response lately has been, stop the earth. I want to get off. Like sometimes, like you said, I just don't feel like I belong here at times. But I don't know. I think going back to what you're saying, I agree. And that's the point I've gotten to for, I don't know, the first 2 years of the past 3 years of crazy. I was really kind of, I don't know, beside myself because it was like, okay, why is this happening to us? Why is this happening to us? And once I could kind of get through that, get past that, you know, kind of process it differently, I have noticed that the more I've connected with women like us on a one-on-one or a two-on-one or whatever, you know, a small group type setting, the more I feel this collective shift and a yearning for that, right? So like I've taught a couple classes out here at our homestead, and the amount of lean in that every single one of them, it's like they're dying of thirst, and that woman to woman connection, you know. So I think back, one of the reasons I started doing some of the classes that I do out here is more for that connection. So I was fortunate that my grandma and mom did a lot of kitchen time together, and not, I don't want to make this a gender thing, but there's a reason women went to the river to collect water together. There's a reason that women birthed children together. There's a reason women did kitchen time together. Women have a different connection with other women that's needed, and not in the mean girls petty bullshit kind of way, like in the connectedness. I'm going through some shit and I need that women's wisdom and shared intuition to help me through this. And it's been really therapeutic actually to connect like that. I don't know, it's just been really, really cool to connect in that way again, because I hadn't done that since I was, very young when my grandma was still alive. So I just think we need to find a way to bring that back. And I love that we can connect over technology, right? Because you're on the literal opposite side of the world. But I think we need to find a way to do that in person too, because connections, that energetic field, being close to each other also makes a difference, I think.
Absolutely. And I so agree with you, because I remember, and I was talking about this, oh my goodness, probably a year ago. I recall as a girl going to Sunday lunches, and it would be my great grandmother, my grandmother, my aunts, my mother, and me,
Mhm.
all the women at the table after lunch, after we've cleaned up the kitchen, and they would sit with a glass of wine, and we would play tile rummy or cards or whatever, and they
Mhm.
would just talk. They would talk
Mhm.
about everything and anything, and I, as a little girl, would sit there and go, wow, this is so cool.
Mhm.
And then, I lost that because, various of the ladies died, and then I moved
Mhm.
to the other side of the planet. I'm from South Africa, and I didn't find the right connection of women for many, many years. I would keep going into a group of women, something would happen, I would be expelled out of the group because I'm not I'm not I'm not a sister, part of the sisterhood in the way that it is experienced for the most part. Of
Right.
everybody loves you until they kind of figure out, no, no, this is really you, and you're not going to suck up to them, and you're not going to pretend to be something, and you're not going to sit and gossip about shit, and you're not interested in any of that. And
Yep.
then very quickly you kind of like get taken out of the equation. And I had to really come to terms with it last year to go, I am different. And if I can't find a group, I'm going to just call the group to me. And like I said, thank God for technology, which is how the initiative was started, about how do we have rich conversations about doing life differently moving forward. And absolutely, we're going to have to do in person freaking get togethers, because I keep saying, I want to hug everybody. I'm a hugger, right? I want to
Mhm.
hug. I want to sit and drink copious amounts of wine with my girlfriends around a fire and dance and swim with the dolphins and do whatever we want to do in the moment. Because when women come together in an unapologetic space, the growth that we have as individuals and as the collective is more powerful than anything that I've ever experienced. And I've got 30 years as a professional in the personal development industry. Nothing beats women coming together, emotionally evolved women that have done the work to heal themselves, to not have all the bullshit,
Yes.
and to then have these thought provoking conversations.
And I think that's a journey too, though. Like I don't want to sound so, oh, I don't know what the word is. Uh Self-proclaimed healed, that I mean, I just had to do it this last year with a woman we both know. I had a unemotionally evolved moment, got caught up in my own drama. It took me probably 6 or 8 weeks to process through that and go, no, you're being kind of a shit, and I sent her a text and I said, hey, do you have a minute for a phone call? And I called her and I said, here's what was going on. I'm only telling you this because I was being a shit, and I apologize for that, and I really want you to still be a part of my life. And I think if we can call ourselves on our own bullshit on that, I think is really the key too, because I don't know, I find the more that I do that, the less shitty I feel about myself too. Like, even though it's something bad, right? Just to use a simple word, it's something bad that I did or that happened, but I can go, oh, no, I don't want to be like that, and I can say, okay, I get to apologize for what I just did, which, even though we say unapologetic, if we're wrong, we're wrong, right? And that's an appropriate time to be apologetic. Um, and and I'm thankful that, there's a handful of women that I have found now to connect that also do the same thing. Hey, I was caught up in my own story and I let it get in the way. And I just think that's like you said, the women sitting around drinking wine can do that. And somebody can be a shit, and you can either call each other out on it or sit there and wait, because you know that light bulb's going to come on for them. And then when it does, you're like, there it is.
Because we can apologize for our behavior, but we don't apologize for who we are. And I'm always saying, I'm not dead yet, so I'm not done yet. I've never said that my fart smells like lavender. I've never said that I am perfect and through on the other side, because as far as I'm concerned, part of this life journey is us being in amongst of it. And some days we are flying high, and then life gives us the opportunity to go, hey, Al, guess what, bitch? You're still human. Have mud pie. And then you get to have the mud pie and have all the human emotions, all the human responses. But I have it with compassion for myself, and I have a sense of humor about myself, which I didn't have when I was younger. I took myself very serious because,
Yeah.
it was all about how good I was and how good I was at it and all of those things. And so when I wasn't, it'd be like, oh, the sky's going to fall in on my head. Now I just laugh at myself and I go, oh my God, look at you. There you just went off again. And I'm good with it. But like I said, we get to call ourselves out on our behavior after the introspection, after kind of going, oh, okay, no. If I get out of my own story, what is a better story? Right? I'm always after what's the better story, because for me, that's where my happy lies, is where's the better story.
Well, and where's the truth, right? So like back to the original question of what does unapologetic mean? That means, and I hate this our truth, your truth, our truth. No, there's truth. There's facts and there's not facts. The facts are usually somewhere in the middle, right? Like I have my story, the other person has their story. It's not my truth and their truth. The truth is somewhere in the middle, right? Because it's all about perspective. But being able to be honest with yourself when you've infringed on that in some way, shape, or form, and being able to like you said, move forward in that. I'm still working on the not taking myself seriously. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Um, so I still struggle with that one a little bit. I still work through that because it's like, damn it, Missy, you already learned this lesson. Why are you learning this lesson again?
Oh, I just figured after 50 years, it wasn't worth it anymore. I started becoming very humble through cycling, in that no matter how good you are, you fall. And so I fall splendidly all the time. And then I make sure I laugh at myself when I'm lying on the floor. I go play golf. Now, Missy, if ever there was somebody who sucks at playing golf, it is me. So I specifically go and suck at golf to laugh at myself. Nobody else laughs on the field because golfers tend to take themselves very serious, which is probably
Mhm.
why I want to be having fun on that specific course. Um,
So you need to come golf in Wisconsin because golfing is actually more of like field drinking. Like we take the golf cart and it's like a drink a hole. And I mean, that's an aggressive day, but so we don't take ourselves too seriously, usually, us redneck golfers. We just go out and drink and hit the ball around. And if it goes in the hole, great.
yeah, I don't even always hit the ball. Sometimes I can throw it further than what I can hit it. And apparently, you're not supposed to do that. My point is, it's going towards the hole, right? And sometimes I also swap balls. So if somebody else's ball is closer to the hole than mine, then I just play off that ball, because I figure if they could get it further the first time, they'll probably get it further the second time, so they can go play my shitty balls.
My husband likes to do this thing where when you drive up with the cart and you're going to get out to play your ball, he'll drive over your ball so that it smashes it into the ground. That's helpful. Not. Or when you're leaning out to grab your ball, because let's say we're doing a scramble where you do play that better ball. When you're leaning out to grab yours, he'll crank the wheel so that you take an ass over tea kettle tumble out of the cart. That's another one of his favorite things to do. So we're kind of, we're probably not welcomed back on a lot of courses. They allow us, but we're not welcomed.
Oh, I love that. Where else in life do you feel like you're allowed, but you're not welcomed?
Pretty much everywhere I go. There's a meme that goes around. So I have two sisters, and back in our younger days when we were going to, so around here we have a lot of what we call country bars. They're middle of the nowhere. super cheap drinks, either a jukebox or a band, and we loved to dance. We grew up dancing. My parents were the couple on the floor that everybody would stop and watch to dance. And in Wisconsin, it wasn't weird 40 years ago to take your kids to a bar because it was more of a, they're called supper clubs here. So you'd have dinner would get done, and then the band would come out. So like the whole family would be there, right? It was more of a family thing. Um, and so there's been more than one time, and my maiden name is Olson. There's been more than one time that we three girls would walk in and you would hear, oh shit, the Olson girls are here.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the title of today's podcast, by the way, allowed but not welcomed. I feel like that in most areas of life. I'm allowed because they can't find just cause to not allow me. But I'm
I would say
so
that's a pretty good
disruptive.
summary.
You know,
Yeah, I
even
would say
in
that's a pretty
business.
good summary too.
Yes. Whether it was in school, in business, on social, I'm allowed because they can't not allow me, but I'm too disruptive to be welcomed. Um, and I feel that as an unapologetic woman, I'm not disruptive for the sake of being disruptive. I'm disruptive because I really unapologetically take a stand for the magnificence of people. I unapologetically take a stand for the empowering, no, not the empowered self. I don't believe we can empower other people. I believe we can rempower others, reminding them to empower themselves. But I do take an unapologetic stand for the empowered self. And for focusing on creativity rather than problems. So everything that society is preaching and teaching at the moment, I have a look at anything that is accepted by the masses, I question. Anything that has been said more than twice, I question, because that is spell casting, right? And what we are seeing at the moment is hypnotic spell casting on the masses and by the masses, because all they do is regurgitate everything that everybody else is saying and then go, but it's the truth, because everybody says so. And I go, well, just because everybody says so doesn't mean we want to keep on creating life from that point of view, considering how miserable most people are.
Right.
How then do we actually, and I love the fact that you feel like you don't belong. The podcast that was released this week or last week with Andrea Lee Austin, we were talking about the fallacy of us needing to belong. I believe women like us, one of our superpowers is the fact that we don't belong and we don't need to belong. We don't feel lonely because we don't belong to the club or the cool kids or the community or whatever the tribe crap is that they are telling us that we need. How do we have more fun with this, though, is my question. How do we have more fun with understanding that we are allowed but not welcomed?
For me, it's always been kind of a let them, right? So like my mother-in-law, so my husband and I have been together since my senior year in high school. But I knew him before that because slightly inappropriate, but he is my best friend from high school's older brother. And I had a crush on him for a while. So I've known my mother-in-law longer than I've known my husband. And she had this phrase that she'd always use, and I still hear it in the back of my head. She still says it. She's told my children it, and it is, other people's opinion of you is none of your business. And I love it. When I was younger, so my sister-in-law is she's very charismatic. She's a beautiful human. She was always very popular. She was very athletic. And I was always kind of, I was very grateful because she was still friends with me, even though like all of the things in high school would tell her not to be. I was none of those things. I was what I called a floater. I kind of like bounced group to group, but I didn't really belong with any of them. And I was just always kind of my own thing. And for the most part, I've always been okay with that, but you get moments where you do get lonely and you do question and you do wonder. And my mother-in-law would say that what other people think of you is none of your business. So I think the key for me has been to continue to do the things that I know I've been gifted with, or that I find, I'm going to use the word productive, but I don't always mean tangibly productive. I mean, they either bring me joy, they bring me purpose, they move me forward in some way, whether that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, with my family, whatever. So like lately, my children are older now. My daughter just graduated high school this last year, so she's 18. My son's 21, and because of college and work and whatever, I wasn't there a lot when they were little, and that's been, actually, it has been a regret of mine. And I've been able now to sort of almost repurpose that time and get to connect with them as adults in a different way. And so that's kind of what I mean by moving forward or progress, right? That's not something tangible. Like I can't measure my relationship with them, but I know that by now that they're older, okay, so do I want to go have daughter or coffee with my daughter this morning, or do I want to do the dishes? Well, the dishes would be tangible progress, and that's what I should do as a good wife and a good woman, is keep a clean house. I've never been a good housekeeper. I've always rather done shit with my kids, right? So just this week, I had all these chores that I should have done, and instead I went and hung out with my daughter. So it's those, that's what I mean by like progress, finding those ways to connect with whoever that is, because that's the forward movement that I want.
Yeah, I have to say, I always say that I didn't get a degree to be a housewife. For me, at the end of the day, I was in the fortunate position that I was self-employed since my kids were little. And I made that conscious choice because I couldn't stand not being there for them when they were little. And throughout their school careers, high school, everything, I would make time for them in the afternoons to have coffee that would be scheduled into my business calendar as a client. And I'm very blessed to have done that and to have made that choice.
Yeah.
And even yesterday, I went to go babysit for my boyfriend's kids, who broke his collarbone. And I was like, yeah, I can just take my laptop and I can go and do the meetings there, and it's good. I get to do that. I don't normally talk about business on this podcast, but I do want to talk about yours because I believe it's a part of your story in terms of coming back to intuition and guts and wisdom and heart operation. So are you willing for us to play a little bit in your business space?
Yes, but I am very insecure because it's a very baby business. And I recently just kind of like you, I kind of deleted my entire website. I've kind of somewhat abandoned my socials lately because I was trying to follow all the algorithms, and I was trying to do what all the experts say, and I was trying to be ready before I did anything. And recently kind of went, fuck that. I've never followed that model. So why am I trying to follow that now? So everything's kind of pseudo offline at the moment while I reassess and kind of redeploy in a way that feels better and feels more true to me.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't feeling right.
So interesting. I just sent our friend a message today and go, hey, do I transfer the old domain to keep it? Or do I just say, screw it, even though we just got the Global Mental Health Award? Do I just say, screw it, and just focus on unapologetic women? And my gut is to screw it and just focus on unapologetic women and just put all my energy and love into that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I've done in business a few times, is reinventing, restarting, and being unattached to letting go, to letting die, because I believe that death is part of the birthing process, and that's okay. I think businesses are so forgiving. We get to experiment and we get to follow the expert advice with the algorithms and this and that. And for women like us, it never works, by the way. It never, ever, ever works when we follow the proven methodologies. When we step out of our creative powers, can we almost say witchy powers? Because when we just create, because we can't not create, it's when we're at our most potent and our businesses do the best. But considering that, you know, the podcast is only going to be screened a few weeks after we've recorded, which means by that time there just might be a new website or a social post or whatever.
Mhm.
I would love for you to tell us, our listeners, a little bit about your business and more specifically why it came about. Because it was a beautiful story for me, which is why I really am being a persistent little bitch and pulling that out of you right now.
I would say in a phrase, it was a way for my husband and I to kind of get our family to slow down and get back to our roots. So both of us grew up rurally or agriculturally. I grew up on a predominantly a beef farm. I didn't know it, but we were poor growing up, and we ate out of a garden, and we ate wild game that my dad had hunted, and we ate beef from the neighbors, and we ate very well. But it was because we couldn't afford food. I found out much later. But fast forward, and that actually has made a really good foundation for our family's health. And my kids were the weird kids that when they were little, they would order vegetables in a restaurant. And my son loves liver and onions, which in the U.S. most people would be like, what? And that's one of his favorite things. But as we were raising kids, and as we were getting on in our married life and whatever, it just felt more and more chaotic. The more I chased my degree, the more I chased my career, the more I chased and tried to climb and climb and climb, the more unhappy all of us got, the more disconnected I felt like we were. I was working off shifts and split shifts and, just trying to do all the things to be all the things for all the people all the time. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker, to the point where I actually gave myself, it wasn't a mental breakdown, it was a physical breakdown. I ended up coming down with a couple of autoimmune diseases, and it pretty much sidelined me pretty aggressively for a couple of years. Prior to that, I rode a Harley, and I love my barbells, and I love being strong, and I love people underestimating me in the gym because I can pull a lot of weight on a barbell, and I'm 5 foot nothing, and people are just always amazed by that. And I stand there and I go, "Yep, I did that." And I love that feeling. I love the feeling of being strong. And so in that time period, another girlfriend of ours, that she was like, "This isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. You need to figure out why this is happening for you and get back to that." And so that was actually leading up to the world shutting down. Probably 2 years before that. So the 2 years before the world shut down, and then the 2 years the world was shut down, was probably some of the darkest times for me. I couldn't work out. I felt like crap. I had put on a ton of weight. My kids were getting more and more distant from me. My husband and I were fine, but we weren't thriving like we could have been. And then we ended up moving out here to this little homestead that we have. And I said, I still want cows, but he's not for the cows. But we now have chickens and we have bees. We have started an orchard. So we have, I don't know, I'd have to actually count, probably 60 trees started, plums, pears, apples, cherries, all the things. And from the bees and the fruit, we have started creating things, and like a big fad right now. And I'm not doing it because of the fad. This is how I grew up. It was field to table, farm to table, that this whole, like, you see it, you grow it, you clean it, you eat it. Like, my children have never not just grabbed vegetables out of the garden, dirt and all, and just eaten them. Like, there's a natural immunity that the earth gives us. Walking barefoot on the ground, this has actually been proven. Like, a lot of people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I'm in the springtime when it's first getting warm out, I am barefoot on that grass the minute I can. Like, there's just something to it that people don't get it until they try it. So we'll call it like winter between 2019 and 2020. Everybody had all this time because the world shut down, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna start making some shit. I'm just gonna start making some shit. So I started making soap. My husband and I started making mead actually prior to that, 2018, New Year's Eve, 2018. We didn't have kids because they were both off doing their own thing. And we were actually kind of bored, to be honest. And we really like to drink. So apparently in Wisconsin, when you're good at drinking, then you start making things to drink also. It's like escalating that hobby somehow. And the first batch we made was god awful, and we were like, "Oh my god, what have we done?" So we did a little bit more research. Found out that mead, which is honey wine, so it's water, yeast, and honey, um, is better the more it ages, just like us. And so we put it away for a little bit, and we sampled it a little bit later, and we're like, "Holy shit, we're kind of good at this." So fast forward a couple of years, this last summer, we actually won some awards with the mead at our local contest, took grand champion with one of our meads. And between that and I'll call it the apothecary. So I make soaps and balms and things like that. And as many ingredients as I can. I can't source coconut oil. I can't, there's just some stuff I can't source from my property, but I'm growing some of the herbs. I'm growing some of the flowers. My parents still have beef and a friend of ours still has beef. So I use grass-fed beef tallow. Because I also don't like all the waste. Like, it's going to make me sound like a weird hippie, but I don't like all the waste that we have either. So like a lot of people are like, oh, I only want steaks. I don't want the fat. I don't want the bones. Well, our dogs get the bones. I make bone broth for soups, like, and nobody wanted the fat. Well, one of the best soaps ever created is tallow soap. So I'm using the stuff that people were throwing away. Turns out I'm actually pretty good at that too. And a lot of my friends will say, hey, I'm having, like, actually every product that I make right now is because I had a friend say, I'm suffering or struggling with this thing. What do you think? And so I've made a solid lotion bar because a gal that I know from a neighboring town, she was a poll worker during one of the elections, and they made her hand sanitize between every single person. And I'm not sure if you know this, but hand sanitizer is absolute shit for us. And her skin was like sloughing off and she was bleeding and it was cracked and it was horrible. And so I made this solid lotion bar because she needed something that would like actually sit on it for a little while. And so I made that for her. And within 3 days, she called me crying happily because she's like, I cannot believe how good this stuff works, And so it's things like that that really, I don't know. I get super excited when somebody's like, I have this problem. Can you help me fix it? Because I am a fixer. I'm a problem solver. And I think that's why I ended up going into school for engineering, because engineers are just problem solvers. And I'm naturally wired to be that way. So this kind of combines the earthy green witch that we talked about before with my process techie brain. And I get to marry those two things. And so the long-term goal is to actually have a meadery, which is like a winery, but it's all mead. And as many of the products as possible come from our homestead. And have like this little destination place that I want to just be really, really quirky and earthy. And it's going to be the vision. If I could just paint for the vision for everybody, they would just love it. But it's this big ass old wood barn, and it's got a fireplace, and there's couches, and it's wood floors, and it's big metal rivets, and there's a smoking lounge where you can go have a cigar, and there's floral cocktails made from mead and the lavender that I grew out back. And like, you can go wander through the bees if you want, because I don't know if you know this, but bees actually vibrate at the same frequency as your vagus nerve. So they actually bring you joy by being by them. There's all this nerdy shit that I know.
And this is what I love. And this is why I wanted you to talk about it, because I feel like there's a lot of women who are here to marry the old with the new, who are here to marry the feminine with the masculine, who are here to marry the intellect with the heart and the intuition and the healing. There's women who need to hear women like you going, yes, I'm a techie nerd and I'm a green witch. How do I bring all of this together and then create what the dream is? So thank you for sharing that, because I feel like so often women get stuck. And I know that so many of us are looking at what we have become in corporate and going, well, I don't want to be in corporate, but I don't necessarily want to lose all the skills that I've gained in being a successful woman in corporate. But how do I use all of that to create the life that I truly desire? And a lot of that is using, again, the wisdom that and the skills that we've curated in corporate, and then bringing forth our own genius gifts and marrying the two, and then creating something new in the world. So I'm freaking excited about this. I think it's amazing. I really, really am. I can't wait to drink your mead. I'm going to drink your mead one day.
I think the big so what in that is you have to think about life as an and, not an or. And I think so many people think it has to be an or. And I've just never been that way. I guess I'm probably just kind of greedy because I don't like giving up two opposing things that I like. And so I don't ever say I can't, I don't know, what's an example? I can't afford that. I say, how can I afford that? Or I can't do that. I'm 5 foot nothing, right? So I can't reach the top shelf. Yeah, I can climb, right? So it's like, it's not an or, it's an and. Yes, I can be short and I can climb on the counters and get the shit that I want. Like, it's an and.
It's an and. I love that. Looking at the time, I think this is a beautiful place for us to bring this conversation to a close. My question to you, my final question to you is, what do you take an unapologetic stand for in this lifetime?
Oh, I've been thinking about that since we first booked this. I would, my big, when I summarize things that are bothering me or things I'm frustrated about, it really does come down to injustice. Like I always root for the underdog. I've always, I get that life's not fair, but there's things that are truly unjust. And so I've always tried to speak for short, small, demure women that I'm none of those things, so like thinking back to like my corporate life, I'd be the one that would stand up and say, no, that's not right. And that's not right. Even if it meant I get ostracized, I've always taken a stand when that was the right thing to do, even when it was the unpopular thing to do. So in a word, injustice.
I love that. By the time this goes live, all of Missy's links will be in the comments, just saying, so that you can connect with her. You're a woman worth knowing. I want to say that to you. And
Thank you.
I'm so deeply grateful to Amy for having introduced us. Amy, if you're listening, I know you're going to be listening. Thank you. This was an amazing introduction. Missy, you have more wisdom than what you are even aware of. And I absolutely 100% believe that your business is going to be a resounding success far beyond your vision right now, because it's being called forth by so many people who are seeking that new balanced way of marrying the old with the new lifestyles in a way that's way healthier for us mentally, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. So I can't wait to see where your business goes, baby, because it's going to rock. It's going to rock. To all our
Thank
listeners,
you.
To all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us again today. Connect with Missy. We will have an Instagram account at least in the comments by the time this goes live. I'm committed, damn it. And we look forward to another conversation next week. So until then, don't forget, get to live our legacies, unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. Have an amazing day further. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Unapologetic Woman and on LinkedIn at Elle-Naj. And if you're interested in experiencing the Unapologetic Woman Friendwork Soiree, book in for our next open meeting at unapologetic-women.as.me/unapologetic. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.